Hello there, Ray here, and today I will be giving my explanational walkthrough through my latest build, the Sansidiator. This farm does contain withers, so if you run this farm in a manner that differs from mine, you do so at your own risk. So I had the idea of combining a sand generator with the Obsidian farm about 1.5 years ago, but it wasn't until we ran out of sand on our SMP server did I start taking this concept and making it into reality. One main feature of this farm is that it is infinitely automatic. This allows you to AFK here as long as you want without having to do any player interactions. I made a lot of interesting discoveries during this build, some of which I will describe in more detail in the future. This build is complex, but everything that is complex can be broken down into smaller, more manageable parts. The first system that we will look at is the sand recycling system. The sand starts by getting pushed in from the overworld side. It gets pushed into the entrance end portal in such a way that when one falling sand entity is pushed in, two falling sand entities appear on the Obsidian platform in the end. Since both these falling sand entities are sent onto the Obsidian platform, and they both become a block in the same location, one will become a block and the second will break off as an item form, as we can see. The sand that is set in as a block form will be invisible when it comes in, but once moved, it will become visible. Once the sand is pushed, it will be pushed into the wither's head, at which point it will turn from a block form into a falling entity form, and once it turns into a falling entity form, it will fall through the wither and through the water, through the fence gate, and will land on this hopper as a block form. Once the sand lands as block form, it will complete a circuit, allowing the smart piston to fire. Once the piston fires, it will send the sand into this vertical sand elevator. This vertical sand elevator will take the sand up into another vertical sand elevator, and then it will come up into some more smart pistons, which will take it into a conveyor belt. Once the sand reaches the exit end portal, it will be dropped back into entity form, and then it will be pushed by a slime block, which will give it momentum as it goes through the portal in that direction. When the sand is sent into the exit end portal, it will come out at world spawn. When the sand comes in, it will keep its same momentum and direction as it had in the exit end portal. When entities are sent through the exit end portal, they will be tried to be placed on top of the uppermost block at world spawn. Since we have an open fence gate, this allows the falling sand entity to stay in entity form and will allow it to continue traveling. Sand will land onto a smart piston conveyor, which will take the sand out to the entrance end portal. Once the sand has reached the entrance end portal, it will travel up to the level of the entrance end portal. Here it will be sent in such a manner that will cause it to duplicate. The next part that we will look at is the cobblestone pusher that pushes the sand off the platform. When an entity comes through the entrance end portal, it will refresh the Obsidian platform in the end. This will remove all blocks 3 meters above the Obsidian platform. When the platform is refreshed, this flowing water will be removed. This will allow this bud to detect a block update here. This bud will come into a T flip-flop. This T flip-flop will allow it to alternate between the two sides. Once a side is selected, the power will come into here and will start a piston sequence, which will allow this row of cobblestone to be pushed into the platform, pushing the sand away. The power will continue and go up and also activate this cobblestone generator, allowing more cobblestone to be replaced. Now let's take a look at the wither cage. The withers are sitting nice and perfectly centered inside this box. The main head is focused downward at this snow golem here. The side heads are focused directly forward at this iron golem in front of them. The wither does not have any blocks underneath of him, but he is trying to float on top of this water. This allows him to push up against this stone stair here. Now that we all have a rough understanding of what's going on, let's start from the beginning and see how these components work as one. Before we can start the farm, we must prep the area so the farm will start up correctly. In both boxes we have the wither formation set up, all but one skull, we have the one skull in this dispenser, which will be placed. We also have this formation correctly with the air block here, which allow the wither to be spawned in. On the opposite side, we have a water bucket. This water bucket will come out and place water over top of the wither's head, allowing the explosion to not break the nearby surrounding blocks. We also have this cobblestone here. This will prevent the wither's explosion from breaking the boats. We have this boat here above this trapdoor, resting on this stair. The way we do this is that we have to put the boat on top of the trapdoor, but you'll notice that the boat will sink downward. So to prevent it from sinking downward, we will have to place a block there, let the boat sit on top of that, and then it will sit on the stair above the trapdoor. And then we can come in and we can push in our stair here. And don't forget to replace this piston. We do this to prevent the boat from clipping through this floor here, since we want the wither's head to be pressed up against the stair when it's brought down, and we want the boat to be sitting on this iron door here. If the boat does clip through, it will push down on the wither's head, pressing the wither down into the water, not allowing him to see the side head target. Now with the wither setup, we will focus on the two targets. Down here we have the snow golem, which is the main head target. He will always be there. The side head target will be this iron golem, which will get spawned from this dispenser with the pumpkin. Since the main head has to focus on the main head target first, and then the side head target has to come into existence, we will spawn this after the wither is spawned in. This means after the wither is spawned in, the wither will take up only one spot, one block here, and this will allow this cobble generator to push in cobblestone, allowing this iron block to line up with this formation, and at this point a pumpkin will be spawned on top of him, allowing an iron golem to be spawned here. Now we will want to place in all our sand that is going to go into the system. The amount of sand depends on how far your entrance end portal is from spawn. It also depends on at what speed you have this clock going. After talking with Myra and Irio, we concluded that the theoretical maximum speed that this clock can be set to is 31 game ticks. This is because of a rare occurrence of when the wither will try to shoot off his wither skulls at the side head target, and there just happens to be a sand block in his head. He will not be able to see the side head target, and therefore if this occurs a couple times in a row, he will think that he has no side head target to shoot at, and he will shoot off a blue wither skull. To avoid this occurrence, we cannot damage the wither any faster than 60 game ticks. Since the sand is alternating between the two withers, we can increase the speed from 61 game ticks to 31 game ticks per cycle. Because of lag, the blue wither skulls will be summoned at this theoretical max speed. In single player, I do not recommend any speeds faster than 17 redstone ticks, and in multiplayer, it will depend on how laggy your server is, but I do not recommend any speeds faster than 20 redstone ticks. You will want to check and make sure that your cobblestone clock is on. We have two levers here that will turn the farm on. The bottom lever here will go firstly over here and activate the wither skull dispenser. And then after a delay, it will come and activate the water. The same line will also go with a greater delay. It will activate the iron golem dispenser. As you saw, when the wither was summoned in, he was focusing down on this golem. This golem is in a minecart, so he's perfectly centered, and he has a glass block in his head to prevent him from shooting snowballs. He is just slightly offset in a way that the wither will be facing forward, but not so far offset that the wither will attempt to fly over top of him. Secondly, the water came in and ran down this hole, which was formed when the wither was spawned in. This prevented the wither from blowing up the area around him. Lastly, the iron golem was spawned in. This gives a target for the side heads to attempt to shoot at, but since the black wither skulls are summoned within the cobblestone will absorb the black wither skulls. Once the wither has fully spawned in and has done his explosion, the second lever can be activated. The second lever will firstly go to this piston, which will push down this cobblestone wall. This will push down the stair, which will block this water source. Then the cobblestone will come down and help support this boat. And when this stair comes downward, this iron trapdoor will break off. This will allow the boat to start settling downward as the wither comes up, and the wither will come in contact with the boat, and the boat will settle down onto this iron trapdoor over here. And then after a short delay, the power will come into this piston, which will push this stair down and will hold the wither's head down, prevent him from flying up. Power will also go over here and turn this redstone torch off, and this will allow the sand to start getting pushed into this conveyor belt from this smart piston. After starting the farm, you will want to let all the sand cycle through the entire system a couple times. You will want to check and make sure that the sand is coming through at a steady pace. If the sand is not coming through at a steady pace, then you will have to remove all the sand and restack it and start it again. The sand coming in at inconsistent speeds is most likely caused from the overworld chunks not being properly loaded. If you're having problems keeping the delay between the sand consistent, there are some things you could do to improve this. The easiest way would be if you were lucky enough to have your entrance end portal in spawn chunks, since these you can have always loaded. One way you can keep your overworld loaded all the time is by having a hopper clock that goes into a dropper that will shoot out an egg that comes from these chickens into the nether portal. Since the chickens are in entity processing chunks, since they're in spawn chunks, they will always be laying eggs. You will also want to go on the nether side and put a fire there. That way it will destroy the eggs that come through. With the sand leaving, let's talk more about this conveyor belt. Since the player will always be in the end and will always have this conveyor belt loaded, we do not have to have this conveyor belt to be jam-proof. What we do have to worry about is that if our conveyor belt is too long, it will be into unloaded chunks, and at this point it could break. For the withers to take damage and do their block busting effect, they will have to be in entity processing chunks. But also, when the sand falls into the exit end portal and gets pushed by the slime block, we will also want that to be an entity processing chunk. With a render distance of 8, which is normal, you will load an entity processing chunk where you are standing. Plus you will also load 8 chunks in one direction and also 8 chunks in the other direction. The 2 outer chunks on both ends are going to be lazy chunks, and therefore we cannot use these. So therefore you will have a total of 13 entity processing chunks. Even if your exit end portal is not as close as it is in my scenario, there's a good chance by standing in the middle you will be able to give entity processing chunks to both your exit end portal and the withers at the farm. If the exit end portal is not in entity processing chunks, you will find that the piston has extended as the sand attempted to become an entity form, but instead it will just become a block and will be set on top of the sticky piston, and the piston will try to retract and it will break the system. Now that I have an alternate account in the end, I can safely leave the end while it's still loaded by the alternate account and come here to the overworld. You do not need to have a fence gate up at world build height to have this work. You can also just push the sand in to the exit end portal and just have it drop down at your spawn. But using this method you can get the sand pushed out quite a ways, allowing you to keep your spawn looking clean still. You do not have to have the fence gate open for this to work, but if the fence gate is open, this allows you to drop other items such as ender pearls through your exit end portal, and they will drop down towards your spawn point. But you may have to put on a extra funnel around here just so that the ender pearls don't get thrown about. In some game versions, they will not allow you to place blocks at the world build height. They will also not allow you to power a piston and push a block up into world build height directly. But using slime blocks, you will be able to push these blocks up into world build height on versions where you cannot normally do so. In my scenario, I have the sand come down and go into a piston chain that is at Y11. This allows you to hide the entire piston chain underground. Also, it's a nice level to mine some diamonds. If you use this, you'll just need to make a small opening, a small shaft that comes down that allows the sand to land here. Once here, I have a instant 0 tick piston that pushes the sand out of the way, allowing more sand to come in without getting broken off. When choosing an entrance end portal to send the sand to, I highly recommend that you choose one that is in a diagonal direction from spawn. This allows you to use the piston's full capacity, also while making this thing jam-proof. This first section of the sand conveyor will get the sand into a location. From this location, we can have a repeating pattern that will allow us to take the sand out to the entrance end portal while loading the minimal amount of chunks. To prevent future problems, we will also want to have this conveyor not only jam-proof, we also want it not to have the redstone torch to burn out. We also want to survive server saves, and if a player comes and loads this and then unloads this real quickly, we want it to be able to survive through that. And we also want it to be able to work through cross chunk borders. As long as there is a player in the end, and there is sand going through out the exit end portal, the overworld will always be loaded. In this case, a player can load this and unload this without interrupting the rest of the conveyor belt. To prevent from the conveyor belt jamming, we use the limitations of the pistons pushing, which is 13 meters. This allows it to never be able to push the sand and break off this repeater. If sand were to jam up for some reason, we have a clock here that will constantly try to update this piston, and this will allow the very first jammed clock to unjam the whole system, and it will continue unjamming itself until the entire system is unjammed. Now that redstone torches can burn out permanently, we'll have to put in a repeater here. This will allow the repeater to update the redstone torch, allowing it to fix itself. Here we have a chunk border, and in this case the redstone torch that is on the block, if it was here, would not update because it's on a chunk border. In this case, we'll have to run the redstone wire over onto the other side, update this block, allowing it to update this redstone torch. These purple and blue chunks are entity processing chunks that are in spawn chunks. Over here we have some other chunks. These are lazy chunks that are also in spawn chunk. Right here is the border of spawn chunks. As soon as spawn chunks ends, the rest of the chunks will be unloaded normally. So we'll have to load them remotely by using the hoppers that are pointing into the chunk with the item in them. This will constantly update this chunk, allowing the redstone to work properly. We will have to continue this all the way into the entrance end portal. We will use this diagonal method for most of the way, as close as we can get to the entrance end portal. From here we will want to continue sending the sand through one chunk, all the while keeping the redstone within this chunk. We will continue loading chunks all the way until the entrance end portal. And here, the entrance end portal will always be within one chunk, and in that chunk we will want to make an entity processing. To do that, we will load an area that is 5 by 5 that is lazy chunks. These will process redstone, but will not process entities. These vertical sand elevators are smart pistons, and they're also jam-proof. Once the sand comes up here, we have a piston that will prevent the sand from coming in at a speed faster than what can be taken in by the withers. This piston is a safety measure to prevent the sand from clogging up and then coming through all at once. This would cause the withers to shoot off blue wither skulls. Once the sand has reached the entrance end portal, we'll have the sand lifted up by this piston. Then the piston will retract, dropping the sand, allowing it to become falling sand entity, at which point these sand blocks will come and push the entity forward, and it will fall down as a falling sand entity, in which case it will go into the entrance end portal, while also hitting on the soul sand. Using this method, we can have the sand duplicate itself so that on the end side there will be two falling sand entities that come into the end. You do not have to use a soul sand block. You can just leave your ender portal frame there. I use a soul sand block because it's solid. This method was first showcased by Ground 15. Since all these chunks are remotely loaded from spawn chunks, when the server saves, which occurs every 45 seconds, all these extra chunks will be unloaded for at least one game tick. When this occurs, entity processing chunks can suffer greatly, because these entity processing chunks will become redstone processing chunks, also known as lazy chunks, in which case the sand can become a block form and will be set to the lowest point. Because of this problem, I cannot use a slime block sand generator as I shown in my showcase video. Over here I built one version of my slime block sand generator. You can come and test it out. It works just the same as the other one, except it uses this block here to break the sand as it enters the entrance end portal. Using this non-slime block sand generator does infringe upon the spawning space of the silverfish farm a little bit more than the slime block version. You can enter the end portal while this is running, though I do not recommend it. The way this is done is that you remove the sand block that's on top of the piston, and then when the piston goes down, instead of the sand going in, you will just have to go in, taking its place. Once inside, you will want to get into the boat. That way you are out of the end platform. Back here in the end to discuss a little bit more about this contraption. The cobblestone pushers are instant reacting. This is done by when the water is removed, the piston will push the redstone up, instantly depowering this redstone line. This will allow one of the sides to get depowered, allowing the wire to instantly get powered, and which will go into the piston sequence. It also uses these vertical instant zero-tick piston pushers, which will instantly push in the cobble as soon as the obsidian platform refreshes. When building the cobblestone pusher, I wanted a system that would be pushing the cobblestone forward with what time it had, and not have to continuously retract to take in more cobblestone. This meant I would have to generate a row of 5 cobblestone and push them in all at once. So I came up with this piston pusher that will push the sand off the platform without going over the 12 block maximum push limit. This allows one side to go into its retraction sequence as the other side is going into its extension sequence. This improves the efficiency of this system. The cobblestone pusher max speed is only reached when using this farm for sand only. The water serves two purposes. Not only does it update the bud every time the platform refreshes, but it also pushes the blocks towards the collection area. The blocks that are produced by this farm are washed down into the same part as the wither, and from here they get pushed down into this hopper, and where you can take this hopper to whatever collection area you want. I just have some chests lined up here that are collecting the items. Once in a while blocks will get hung up on these 2 obsidian blocks. This doesn't really affect the farm much. When using a clock delay of 21 redstone ticks, you can be able to have the withers break the obsidian and have it regenerate shortly after they break it. This isn't necessary for the wither cage to be stable. This may seem like a good thing, but there is a rare chance that as the cobblestone is coming back into place, one of the side heads will shoot off a black skull, and it will try to move forward towards the iron golem. But as the cobblestone is pushing it in, it will push the skull backwards and press up against this obsidian platform, since it would have regenerated, causing the skull to get pushed inward into the body of the wither, and at this point it could cause damage to the wither. Even though this event does not cause any harm to the system and does not cause any blue wither skulls to be summoned, as a safety precaution, we will want to try to avoid this event. By pressing F3B, we can see where the heads are located on these mobs. This is represented by this red line. This is also the suffocation point as well as the line of sight. You can see that when the sand enters the wither's suffocation point, he will take damage, but only about after a second does the wither actually does its block breaking mechanism. This allows time for the sand to leave the area. You'll also notice that when the wither does its block breaking mechanism, it will destroy the water. This allows the wither to start falling downward, but then the water will replace itself, allowing the wither to float back up again. During this process, the wither will sink downward, but he will never lose line of sight with this iron golem, and therefore he will never shoot blue wither skulls. At the bottom we have a cobblestone wall that's connected to a fence gate. This will prevent the wither from getting pushed backwards when the cobblestone generator pushes more cobblestone in. Using these mechanics, I was able to create an infinitely stable wither cage. Since every obsidian platform is located at the same coordinates in every seed, this allowed me to build a farm that is directionally based. Since the coordinates are the same, the chunks are also the same. This allowed me to put both withers, both snow golems, and both iron golems all in one chunk. One of the things that you will want to avoid while running this farm is unloading these chunks. So before logging off or leaving these chunks, you will want to remove all the sand from the system, and you will also want to kill off the withers. To remove the sand from the system, you'll just start taking away the sand until no more sand comes through the system. At this point, you'll know that there's no more sand in the system. Kill the withers off, you will want to go inside with them. Then you will want to block this water off, and then whichever wither you're not fighting, you'll want to block his view off. And then you also want to block a little bit off of this one too, so he don't quite shoot you. Then you can take your strength potion and start whacking at him, but whack about every 1 second. After he bounces back up, you can hit him again. And you can keep doing this, and he will eventually die. When he's in melee mode, remember to let him bounce all the way back up again before hitting him again. And the side heads will kind of track you, so that's what the wall's for. And he should be about dead. Yeah, one got me. There you go. Let's say that you accidentally unload these chunks. Maybe your client crashes, or maybe your server crashes, but these chunks are unloaded. Upon relogging, there's a few things that could happen. The wither's hitbox could be offset, and he could be inside of one of these adjacent blocks. This is a problem because once he's in one of these adjacent blocks, he'll be standing on one of these cobble walls. And once he's on this wall, he will think that he can be able to walk around, since he can feel the ground underneath of him. And in this case, he will try to move around. If the obsidian is missing here during this process, he will try to walk about and most likely end up in this corner here, and there he will get stuck. For demonstration purposes, I placed the two withers in the corners. This allows us to see how the boat works. Since the boat slightly hangs over into the obsidian platform, it can hold the withers from flying upward. This allows the withers to keep their line of sight, even though they are not technically in the right spot. In this position, the wither's black skulls will eventually break off all the sand that's going through a system, and the system will stop. To fix this problem, you'll just have to remove this one obsidian block. This will allow the wither to get pushed back into the center. Upon relogging, the wither will also have to try to find its main head target and its side head target. This caused the wither to be a bit confused at the beginning. If the wither does not find his targets, he will start to shoot off blue wither skulls. Unloading these chunks while there is sand moving through the conveyor can cause the pistons to glitch out. If you are on a server where the overworld is always loaded, when you unload the end, the sand will continually try and be pushed into the entrance end portal. At this point, it will briefly load the end as lazy chunks. This will allow the cobblestone pushers to start pushing, but then they will be unloaded. And as each sand gets pushed in, the cobblestone pushers will push a little bit more. In this case, the cobblestone pushers will push from both sides, and eventually they will push cobblestone into the wither's heads. This will not affect the farm until you load the chunks as entity processing chunks. In this case, the wither will have a cobblestone in its head and will start shooting blue wither skulls. You would think that the cobblestone would be removed from the obsidian platform every time a new sand is put in, but since the obsidian platform is not loaded by a player, the obsidian platform will not refresh. This allows the cobblestone to build up. Lag spikes could be potentially harmful to his farm. This is because if a lag spike occurs A wither could think that he got damaged in too short of a time period and will shoot off blue wither skulls. Because of this, there is a chance that you will not be able to operate this farm on your server or single player. If you notice a block missing on the sides, this is probably an indication that you had a blue wither skull summoned by your wither. That is probably a sign that your server cannot handle that speed of sand cycling. So you will want to go and change the timing of your sand input. It may be a bit hard to tell that you had a blue wither skull summoned, since most of the explosion will be absorbed by the obsidian or the cobblestone. In this build I use stone slabs, iron blocks, and nether brick slabs. Everywhere where I use iron blocks are locations where there needs to be solid blocks. In locations where I used a stone slab are locations where there does not have to be a solid block. I use nether brick slabs to cover all spawnable places for endermen, since we do not want any endermen near the withers, or else they may mistake them as their main head target or their side head target. If you do not want to worry about endermen affecting with your withers, you can always AFK up at world build height. This will allow you to be a distance of greater than 130 meters away from any spawnable space in which a enderman could spawn on. You will still want to keep your sand covered and try to avoid endermen from taking your sand. I designed this farm for vanilla survival Minecraft versions 1.8.1. It should also work in other 1.8 versions. Using mods that alter chunk loading or game tick can give abnormal results. I did several 24-hour tests, and I also did a 5-day continuous test, and during this period I never had a wither escape. When you get the world download, everything should be set up and should be ready to go. You got your 2 levers here. This clock will be set to 18 redstone ticks. The repeaters will add up to 14 redstone ticks, and the other 4 redstone ticks are in the piston and when the sand moves down. If you adjust this clock, then you also will have to adjust the amount of sand that you put into the system, and you also have to adjust the overworld clock. If you adjust the sand input timer for the end, you also want to adjust this overworld clock so it will protect from the sand coming in at too fast of a cycle. This build is a pretty big build, yet this build is actually part of an even bigger project which you can look forward to in the future. If you have questions, I highly recommend that before you ask the question, you rewatch this video and also check out the world download. There you have it, guys. Explanational walkthrough with the world download for my epic build, the Sansidiator. If you found this interesting, show me with a like. If you want to see what type of craziness I'll be up to next time, subscribe. And don't forget to comment. Bye bye.